Okay, so a warm welcome to our Festival of Business Week of Burton and Cannock events. So my name's Pam Wallace and I'm from the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce with my colleague Max Darrock. We cover Burton-on-Trent and District and Cannock as the divisions of the Chamber. So the campaign is being held in lieu of in-person exhibitions unable to be hosted by the Chamber because of the restrictions. So as you perhaps know, most of this year we would have already held at least 2 exhibitions. So as part of the festival, we're asking Chamber members to attend a number of these events. And these are literally going on from the 1st of June right the way across till the 30th of June. They're all free of charge to attend, and there's some absolutely brilliant subjects out there like today. So the events are showcasing the benefits of doing business with members of the Chambers and obviously the key issues facing your business. So our role, as well as with the Chamber, we're also advisors for the Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire Growth Hub. Now my role, I cover Southern Staffordshire, so that's Lichfield, Tamworth, Cannock, Burton-on-Trent and Uttoxeter. So with the Growth Hub, we've got 120 partners, all holding some kind of free funded support. So if you need to, if you want to know what grants are out there or what training or what are the free support, I'll put my details in the chat box, and please feel free to drop me an email or contact us through the Chamber. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Charles, which is our speaker for this morning. So Charles is the head of bid and tender training from a company called Thornton Lowe. He is a member of the Chamber and is based in Bolton in Greater Manchester. So I'm going to leave you in his capable hands. And over to you. Thank you, Charles.
Well, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. First of all, thanks for taking the time out, because I know you guys will be really busy, and we'll try to keep this within the hour. And I will say, when people see something about anything that's got the word bid or tender in it, people usually run the opposite direction from bids and tenders. So it's great that a lot of you have got engaged with this. I'll give you what I'm intending to do, but who knows what will happen. I'll give you a bit more of a background to who I am and who I work for. Then I'm going to start talking a little bit about some simple things to think about when you're working on your bids. And I would imagine some of you here have been doing it a while. Some of you might be relatively new to it. Some of you may have never done it. But I would talk about some sort of basic things. I'm going to be talking about also areas referred to as win themes and structure and storyboarding. I will explain what these all mean. As we go through things, as Pam said, we wanted to keep it interactive. Now, I think it's fantastic we've got so many people here today. So yeah, if we can use the chat function, if you've got a question, stick your answer in the box. There is the raising your hand option as well. You can give it a go. I can't guarantee we will spot it just purely because of the numbers involved. I'd also say to obviously take advantage of my time here. If you do have questions or things that you want to ask about in terms of bidding or bid writing, go for it. Absolutely go for it. Use the chat function. If we run out of time or whatever, you'll be sent my contact details anyway. So honestly, please feel free to get in touch afterwards with any questions on anything. So I'll give you a little bit of sort of background to who I am. I work for Thornton Lowe. We're a bid writing, bid management company. That is what we do. That's the core of what we do. We've been doing it since 2009. Our head office is up in Greater Manchester, but we are members of Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. So the core of what we do is bid writing, bid management. We'll get involved in over 400 bids per year, of companies of all sorts of sizes, whether it's facilities management, construction, rail, infrastructure, all those types of things, right down to some really diverse areas, seaweed harvesting, deer culling, public toilets, all very, very diverse. A real mix of size of companies, let's say Interserve, Murphy Group, that kind of company, Stobart. right down to much smaller, almost like one-man, two-man band types of companies. Bids of all sorts of values, from millions of pounds down to a few thousand. We are members of the Association of Proposal Management Professionals as well, the APMP, some of you may have heard of. We've learned a lot from them. So what things I'm going to talk about this morning are going to be influenced from the industry best practice, from the APMP, also from what we've learned and from what we do, what we know works, but also from speaking with procurement teams, because I figured, you know what, we sit here working on bids, getting really frustrated with them, very rarely enjoying them. And I thought, actually, what's it like on the other side of the table? What do buyers really look for in their bids? And I think this is something that could be really, really difficult to try and understand. Bids take time. We've got to read them. We have to go through them. We've got a lot of writing to do. But actually, what is the buyer really, really looking for? So hopefully we can, I'll bring that into what we'll be talking about today. I've been at Thornton Lowe for, since May 2012. I've started there writing bids, managing bids, coordinating bids. I've been involved in over 1,200 bids that we've done as a company, and I still do get involved in the bids that we do, more from a review side of things and quality assurance of what the team are doing. Majority of the team are based in Greater Manchester, but some of the team up in Scotland, some over in the Northeast. Majority of things I do are running sort of the training sessions. I've done, since COVID, when we moved online in November, run 32 online events. We've run over 250 face-to-face events pre-COVID, so Birmingham, London, Manchester, and things. But so yeah, the main thing what I do now is sort of the training side of things. I have the joy, if I can call it that, doing all our ISO internal audits and then coordinating the external audits, and also, let's say, get actively involved in the bids that we're doing. So still quite hands-on with that. Our success rate is around 72%. Naturally, we would love it to be higher than that. We're always pushing and driving what we can do better, for our clients. We don't get involved in the pricing that our clients put in their bids, and that's usually the main reason why the bids we're involved in are unsuccessful. But let me start talking a little bit more about sort of the fundamentals of bid writing. Like I said, I don't meet many people who will openly admit to enjoying writing bids. It's one of these things that people have found themselves having to do. Part of they've started doing a job, and then suddenly the next thing's like, oh, can you just help out? Can you just do this? Or they volunteer to help out. And the next thing they know, all the bids are being pushed down their direction. As a result, we have to kind of feel our way through them, kind of like fudging our way, thinking, well, what we're doing here, what we're doing there. We have a responsibility when we're working on our bids is to educate the buyer. This is what it comes down to. In our industry, you hear people talking about persuasive writing. What you don't hear enough of, what is persuasive writing? What's it about? Key things you need to remember. If you think, a number of people here, we've got 40 people on this call at the minute. Neither any one of us, apart from I can see there's Debbie Farrington there and with their colleague, you'll know each other's business, you'll know each other, but I don't know anything about you. How is the buyer going to know anything about you? When your bid's being written, they will assess what you're writing on that bit of paper. They can only assess what they are reading. They're not going to know anything about you, even if you're the incumbent, i.e. you're already working with them. Just because you've been working with them for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever years, you've got to remember those people that you deal with sit over here. The procurement team sit over there. Where do they link up in terms of the bids? You've got to think worst case scenario and imagine, no, they don't. They have to score what you're writing on that bit of paper. So you need to remember, you are the expert in what you do. You are the expert in your company. You are the expert in your industry. What you also have to remember, the procurement team, the buyer or the buyers, that is what they are doing. They are buying things. They cannot be an expert in every sector. They might have a bit of an understanding, but they won't be. One day they'll be buying facilities management service. The next day they might be buying stationery. The next day they might be buying furniture. The next day they might be buying IT services or IT hardware. How can they possibly be experts in all of those sectors. So hence you've got a responsibility and a duty to educate and guide the reader throughout the bid. If you're writing your bid in a way that you think, okay, it's all right, they'll know what we mean, you need to stop yourself and think, actually, will they know what we mean? Who's to say they will know what we mean? So your job, this whole idea of persuasive writing is convincing the buyer why they should choose you. Buyers, they want that reassurance. They want to feel comfortable. They want to feel confident. They are risk adverse. They need to feel safe. So it's about, when you're putting your bid together, is making sure you're doing you're doing exactly that. There are quite a few things that come into this persuasive writing. We think about the style and language we write. We think about evidence, and we also think about this area, the win theme, so these selling points that you put into your bid. When we think about real basic things to do with your bids, some of you have said will have already been involved in this. There's a lot to think about. There is pressure that comes with bid writing. You've got a countdown clock already counting down, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to comply with that with that deadline. That in itself can create anxiety with it. What is very strange, what I find very strange, is that bids are super important. They're really important for people's businesses in terms of sustaining the business, in terms of growing the business. They are important. Weirdly, those habits, bad habits that some of us had at school, seem to have lent themselves into when it comes to bids. What I mean by this, when you're at school or university, you'd be given a piece of work to do, some coursework to do, and you'd be given 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks to do it. But when did you do it? You'd probably do it the night before, or even the morning before, cramming it all together and hoping you put in stuff in there that is going to score you some decent marks. And weirdly, people do this with their bids, largely because they don't like doing it. Bid writing and procrastination seem to go hand in hand, and it shouldn't be that, because you're rushing your bids. Are you getting the right information in? Are you even writing it well? Because we've got to think about the readability of the document. Something that's poorly written will switch people off. We're very much focusing, when we're working on bids, on that cognitive effect we have on the reader. We want to keep them engaged. They will have to read your bid, but make them want to read it. Make it interesting. Make it easy for them to read. One of the key things that can be easily forgotten, if we're rushing anything, we can make mistakes. Those mistakes can impact the compliance factors of your bid. Okay, so the compliance factors, those kind of things: have you signed the right documents? Have you ticked the right boxes? Have you adhered to word counts? Have you adhered to any font instructions? There could be anything within the bid that will impact compliance. If you submit a non-compliant bid, you are making the buyer's job easy. What they will do, they will bin your bid, and they will contact you and they will say, thank you very much, but you've been disqualified from the process for submitting a non-compliant bid. Okay, and that is just super annoying when you've forgotten to do certain things, where you've forgotten to attach a certain document, or even forgotten to do your pricing, which weirdly some people have done. What can be quite useful if you don't already have one is to pull yourself together a template for what we refer to as a bid compliance checklist. Some people in our industry, they refer to these as pilot checklists. And rightly so. If you think before a pilot does anything with the aircraft, they go through some systematic checks, literally ticking things off through a pad. At the front end, before you start any work on the actual writing of the bid, go through and pull out all the compliance issues and make sure you're sharing those compliance instructions with anyone else who's working on the bid. Then you've got a physical checklist that you've got on your desk. As you're going through it prior to submission, you can tick things off, making sure that you've captured everything, that there's nothing that in terms of the compliance that is going to upset the balance of the bid that you've been writing. We also need to assume nothing at all. In fact, the only thing you will assume is they will read every single word that you write in your bid. Hence, this readability is really important. You've got to make it easy for them to read. If I've spoken to buyers and they say a poorly written bid, they'll find themselves skim reading. They have to stop themselves going back to it. It becomes an arduous task. So we've got to make it as easy as possible. And as I said, going back to say your responsibility is that you have to educate the reader, the buyer, into things. Do not assume they will know what you mean. Do not assume that they will understand what you're talking about. You are going to be needing to give the right level of detail into your bid. Think about this. The way you need to have your finished bid is that anybody, whether it's your best friend, your partner, whoever, could pick your bid up and understand it and get it. And really, some people don't do that. So you're assuming absolutely nothing. Like I said, you're the experts in what you do. So you've got to make sure that all that information comes across. Now here, there is a balance here, and I do get this, that when do we go from giving the detail into actually waffling and putting irrelevant information in? You've got to be disciplined with this. When you're writing a bid, you need to think, okay, what is going to be helpful for the buyer here? Or am I just putting stuff in there just for the sake of it? We talk about when putting information together that anything you put in your bid, it adds value, it's credible, and it means something to the buyer. That is key. It means something to the buyer. There can be this tendency. People say, oh, we've got to put this into the bid. We've got to put that in the bid. This is important. Important for who? You think it's important, but does the buyer think it's important? There's very, very difference here. Oh no, we've got to put it, this is really good. Is it? You have to be very critical with what you're doing. And it is difficult, I admit that, because we're all very passionate about the businesses that we work for. We're all aware of, our strengths and things like that. But we also got to be aware of, actually, just because we like shouting about it or we think it's good, is it actually going to fit that particular bid? It might fit some bids, but it might not fit every single bid. Okay. The most simplest thing to do is to read the bid before you start doing anything. Read through it. And again, as I was saying, people rush into their bids. They want to get it done. They want to get out of the way. They hate it, and they'll just charge into it, and they will fail to read everything. You need to be reading the specification of the bid. You need to be reading through all the questions before you start answering anything, linking right bits of the specification to the relevant questions, because ultimately your bid is being scored and you want to be doing everything to maximize your chance of success, ideally through maximizing the points per question that you can be rewarded. So you do need to be a little bit more slow and considered with it. When you're pulling your information, just think about these basic elements of it. Evidence is really key. It's massively important for this persuasive writing. Evidence throughout the entire bid, okay? What I mean by this is, if you are talking about something, show it to them. Show it to the buyer. If it's about proving what you're going to say, we will hear things very commonly. We have a track record, a successful track record of delivering these projects. Prove it to me. Sometimes I have to be very blunt with people when we're working on bids. Well, you're telling me you've got a track record, prove it to me. We've worked on similar projects, we'll prove it. Of course, in bids, we'll be asked to provide case studies, to provide examples. There will be set questions on that, but you need to be thinking everything you're putting in, every response. Well, how can I show an example of this? There could be something about sustainability. Well, where's your carbon footprint benchmark, and what you're doing about that, and how have you reduced it? Little stats and statistics, facts, anything to prove what you're doing. So think about it. If we're talking about it, can we show it? Can we prove it? It can be this other element. Just because they're not asking for it doesn't mean it won't be helpful. For example, CVs, when you're talking about your delivery team. Okay. Once you've written your bid, naturally, you should be reviewing it and checking it. You must proofread it. Proofreading is very, very difficult. You've got to be very disciplined with it, but you have to do it. Factor it in. Now, when we're working on bids in the office or remotely as well with COVID, we refer to them as projects. It's about project planning, knowing what's going to happen and when it's going to be happening. So we will be thinking about, right, when's my first draft going to happen? Who is going to be reviewing my draft? Your review should be a refinement and polishing of what you've done. A review should not be a rewrite of your bid. Before it goes to the review, you should be proofreading. You should be checking. Of course, it's easy for someone else to proofread your stuff, but that's not proofreading. Proofreading is when you're doing. You have to be disciplined with it. Think about what works for you. Whether you can do it on a screen, or whether you need to print it off, or whether you need to engage with any sort of software to do it. What I would say with this is Word is a fantastic piece of kit. It is really, really helpful. It gives it your squiggly lines. We've all seen those squiggly lines that Word will put under some of your text. It can be fantastic. I would say a word of caution here. Word will not highlight words spelt correctly, but put out of context. I've seen some very funny examples of this. And I'm sure you can imagine certain letters can be left out of certain words that actually change the entire meaning of things. So we have to be very, very careful with this. Now, when you're writing your bid, I mentioned this before, is thinking about the readability of the document. Okay, it's got to be easy to read. I'm sure some of you will understand this, where you've picked something up, could be anything, whether it's like a leaflet, a brochure, a book, whatever. If it is hard to read, you switch off mentally. You think, I can't be bothered with this. I don't want to read it. You kind of put it down, or you've got to really push yourself through it and force your way through it. So you have to think about, how can I make my bid easy to read, easy to digest, easy to understand? It's about keeping things as simple as possible. Thinking about the language that you're using, the words that you're using. It's about using plain, simple English. There can be this tendency, we've seen it, where people have approached their bids and have thought, okay, wait a minute here. I have got to really impress the buyer here. So this is a reflection of my business and the service that we're providing. I've got to come across super professional. What they tend to do is like they dig out the thesaurus and start using words that nobody would ever use in everyday speak. The example that I'd like to use with this, it does illustrate this point, and it's also like a very pet hate of mine, is the word utilize. For example, I would never say to any of you here, I'm going to utilize Zoom for this call, or I'm going to utilize my pen. I wouldn't talk like that. So why would I write that way? I'm going to use Zoom. I'm going to use my pen. I'm going to use my phone. Whoever goes, oh, I'm going to utilize my phone to call Domino's. You don't do that. You're going to use it. So why are we using that type of language in our bid? Keep it just simple. And that, just plain simple English with it. In terms of the readability, we also need to think about sentence length here. In the world of bid writing, we write in the active voice and not the passive voice. And the passive voice is a more natural style of writing, I think. But if you write in the passive voice, your sentences will get quite long. When I'm reading bids, and obviously not bids we've written, or people will send us bids to review, it is quite interesting that people will write sentences of anything between 30, 40, 45 words in length, but quite a few of them. They become hard to read. So you need to be thinking, actually, these need to be much shorter than that. We have a rule, 20 to 25 words as a maximum in our bids, and it works really well. It forces you to be writing much more concisely. If you're writing concisely, it's easier to digest. Of course, our sentences can be much shorter than that, but 20 to 25 words works as a very good kind of rule of thumb, if you will. For those of you who have written bids or been involved in writing bids, have a look at some of the bids you've written and see how long your sentences are. If they're short, great, fantastic. But if they are long, you're going to have to revisit this and think, actually, what do we need to do about it? I have seen sentences in triple figures, which you could say is quite a talent, really, to be able to write a sentence in over 100 words. But you've got to, you do need to think about it. I know when I talk to some people, they'll be like, oh, if it's 3 lines, I know it's too long, but we've got to just read it. Sometimes you just read things out loud, and it will make a difference to things. Also thinking about this is about the language or the terminology you're using, about jargon. We all got phrases that we that we use, that we all understand with our colleagues, but putting it into a bid, will someone actually understand what you're meaning? Okay, so think again, link it to plain English. Also, acronyms and abbreviations. Acronyms and abbreviations, they mean different things to different people. Okay, you need to define these in your bid. For example, question number 1, we're writing the answer to the bid. If we're referring to an acronym or abbreviation, we'll spell it out in full. We'll then put the abbreviation or acronym in brackets, and then we'll use that. Then we'll use that acronym or abbreviation throughout the rest of that response. When we get to question number 2, if we're going to refer to that acronym again, we will, or abbreviation, we will spell it out in full. Again, 2 reasons we do that. There is no guarantee the person reading question number 1 is the same person who's reading question number 2. Also, if it is the same person, it works quite nicely as a little bit of a reminder for them. It's about keeping them on side, keeping them interested in your bid. If they switch off, they're not going to be interpreting what you want them to interpret. So think about the style and language which you read. Just because you understand it doesn't mean someone else would understand it. I've spoken to quite a few people on this, and a handful of them, very brave of them, I think, they've said they give their bids to their biggest critic to see if they understand it. When they say that, they mean their wives or partners or whatever, and a bit of a brave move, but some of them admit that, yeah, they give them to their wives or whoever, they're reading it, yeah, they understand the company and what their other half does. When they're reading the bid, they're like, it makes no sense. You've not even answered the question. It's so important. Say you're reading, actually reading that question, understanding and breaking it down. Make sure you're getting your head around it, because if you're not even reading or answering the question, you're not going to be maximizing your chances of success at all. Now, in terms of when you are starting the work on your bid, we will, the first step we do, and it's not just exclusive to us, but in terms of writing your bids, we will go through this exercise of planning our bid out. So we will structure and we will storyboard our bid. Okay, when we're structuring and storyboarding, what this means is essentially we will set out every single response of our bid, breaking that question down into headings. That's the structure of the bid. We will use headings that reflect keywords that are highlighted or will you highlight within the response. Okay, when you are putting your headings in, or your major section headings, you need to be putting your headings will be based on the words that you're pulling into from the question, but you must match the language that the buyer is using. Okay, do not use any other words, because they're words that let me rephrase that. The words in the question, you will mirror that language, because it is what the buyer understands. They recognize those words. They have chosen those words. If you start writing about other subjects, it might mean the same thing, but there's no guarantee the buyer will know what you're talking about. And when we're storyboarding the bid, we will we'll go through and we'll identify what content are we going to be putting in here, what facts, what evidence, what graphics, what information, what are we going to be talking about. What do we want to tell the buyer? The reason we do this is because, well, if you've got that ability to type as you're thinking, fantastic, but it can be quite difficult to do because we're under pressure of pulling the bid together. We need to be identifying what we're putting into the bid before we start writing. Also, it means we can look at it and think, okay, what information do I need to go and ask for? We have what we refer to as our subject matter experts, our technical people, our contributors, those people we're going to go and speak to in the business who are going to feed information to me that I'm going to be putting into my bid. I can't do that unless I already know what, or get a feeling or understanding of what I'm going to be putting into my bid. Also means, if I'm working that out before I start writing, I can go and ask for it whilst I'm producing the rest of the bid, rather than going through the work on the bid, think, oh, I better go and ask so-and-so for information, or I need Pam to give me this. I go and find Pam, I've got five hours to complete my bid, but Pam's busy, it just adds pressure to it. So planning it right at the very, very start means you've got that, like I say, the time scales, that project plan in place. You can identify who you need to speak to and give them much more time to feed information into you. By doing so, you're identifying what you could be referring to as your bid team. Okay, you will hear big companies saying, yeah, I've got a bid team, but largely that bid team will be made up of people who are already doing one job, but they come together as part of the bid. Who do you know is going to be in that bid team unless you start planning things out? Very, very important that you do that. What you can also do at this stage is something we'll do. You're structuring your storyboarding, so you know how you're splitting your bid down with those various headings. You've identified what type of information you're going to be putting in. What previous bids have you got? Where's your bid library? Or, you know, for us, we have the tender library software. We can now be thinking, well, hold on a minute. I've structured this bid, I've storyboarded. This question could be about delivering a quality service, which I've written many times. I can now start thinking about, can I copy and paste from any previous bids? But I will say this, copy and pasting, it does form part of bid writing. It does do, there's no doubt about it. What is key about this is that you are managing this process very, very carefully, because people will often copy and paste and think, right, I've done it, I've put that information in, I've saved myself a bucket load of time. However, that time you've saved, you should then be going back through your information that you've copied and pasted and using that time, and you're tweaking it and you're tailoring it. Every bid is different. No bid is the same. Yeah, the questions that you'll be asked will be similar. The core of what you do in terms of service delivery, product delivery, or whatever, that won't change, but how you're doing it for different buyers will change. So you just need to remember, just because what you've written in one bid won't naturally fit into every other single bid, you will need to tailor that information, even if it is around basic stuff about environmental management. You've got to be very, very focused on doing that. Bids are specific, bids are different. Out of all the bids I've worked on, I've never seen a single bid that has been exactly the same. Okay, so just be cautious around copy and pasting. I would say there is nothing wrong with it. There can be lots that are wrong with it. We have to manage that process very, very carefully. Andrew, thanks. I can now understand why you're waving your hands around. Something else to think about when you're working on your bids. A buyer is going to be asking for a certain product, a certain service. So that's what you're putting your bid in for. But you also need to remember, you are not the only person company putting a bid in. Bids are competitive. People forget about this. There are multiple parties involved in this. For example, we could all be competing companies, all going after a contract or a place on a framework. So what's important here is that we're giving the buyer a reason to choose us. This is something people forget to do with their bids. They say, right, you want, let's go down the facilities management route. I'm putting a bid out for contract cleaning, or there's a bid out for contract cleaning. I need my office spaces cleaning. So I could get 10 companies back all saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to turn up at this point. We're going to do daily cleans, then we'll do a weekly deep clean, then a monthly, super intense clean, do this, do that, do this. We've got this amount of staff, we don't subcontract anything, we've got our own vehicles, I would probably read that 10 times. Everybody is telling me the same information. So what is going to differentiate anybody from the competition? Why would I choose you? This is something people are forgetting to do in their bids. We have to give the buyer a reason to choose you. It's competitive. Bids are competitive by their very nature. If we're not giving the buyer a reason, why are they going to choose you? So there are these elements we need to think about. So in our industry, these are known as win themes, differentiators or discriminators are other words that they are using. Essentially, they are bid-specific selling points. Now, we have unique selling points as a company or as an organization. You do have selling points. They may fit your bid or they may not fit your bid. When we're talking about win themes, their contract or bid specific selling points work on particular bids. They're selling points that won't work on every single bid that you work on. You have to take time. You have to have that discussion, or even the very least that thought process that will drive to an outcome. What is going to win this bid? If you're not asking that question, how are you going to win it? You know, if you're not thinking right, or say what's going to win this bid, you're not going to put anything in there that's going to make you stand out from the competition. Okay, particularly if your competitors are having that conversation. What is really important here is when, as part of your bid process, and I know you guys will be super busy, is this element of competitor analysis or competitor research. Yes, I would imagine you will know who your competitors are, or you will have a good feeling of who your competitors are. But what do you actually really know about them? Do you know what contracts they're winning? Do you know what services they can deliver? Competitor research, you can at the very least look at websites, look at their social media, have a look at what they're doing. They will put case studies on their websites, networking events, or anything. Anyone who's speaking within the industry, anything you can do to find out about your competitors. Now, you highly unlikely to know who you're going to be bidding against on each particular bid. You also need to remember your competition may vary bid by bid that you are that you work on. Okay, it's important that you do this. Any element of competitive research is going to be massively helpful, because you could be saying, right, we're going to be working on this bid, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that. Yeah, but that's what our competitors are doing, right? So what do we need to do? How are we going to counter that? One thing that you can be doing, very easy to do, is doing a strengths and weaknesses assessment of you against your competitors. Okay, this can go one or two ways, because sometimes, well, this is based on people I've spoken to, they will look at all their strengths, but they won't look at their weaknesses. Or more often than not, they will focus on their weaknesses, but not look at their strengths. What you also need to be doing is looking at your competitors as well in the same way. Look at what their strengths are compared to your strengths. Look at what your weaknesses are compared to their weaknesses. You need to take that time out. Now, I'd say your competitors will vary. There'll be big companies might not go for small value contracts. It's not worth their while. Small companies won't go for high value contracts because they just are unable to. So just be aware of that. Your competition may vary region by region as well. Hence why you need to be going into your competitors and think, right, actually, what do they do? Where do they operate? What are they good at? What are they not so good at? In the same vein, what do you know about your customers? Okay. In our industry, we refer to this in terms of what are the customer's hot buttons? What are their issues? What turns them on? What turns them off? Have they got anything, any issues outside of the actual bid itself, in terms of the things that you could assist with, any sort of efficiencies, any sort of waste management, or anything that you could bring to the table that is going to be beneficial to the buyer. So as well as competitor research, we need to actually think, what research are we doing on the customers? So that's where your business development team or sales team should be linking up with those people who are writing the bids, thinking, actually, what could we be bringing? What is going to be helpful to the buyer? Or actually, are we putting things into the bid that the buyer isn't necessarily going to really like? So we need to think about that. When you're working on your bid, what is going to differentiate you from everyone else? Why is the customer going to choose you over anyone else? Okay, so it all does link back to that persuasive writing. You're thinking about the simple way you're writing your bid, thinking about the readability of your bid, thinking about the conciseness of the writing, nice and punchy, giving them the right level of detail. That detail is important, because if the buyer comes away with any questions from what they've been writing on your bid, you've not done your job properly. You need to be covering off those questions before they even occur. Okay, so think about that. Think about the simplicity of your writing. Think about, for example, like the sentence length as well. You must take that time to plan the bid out, and also you must give the buyer a reason to choose you. Okay, so I've tried to cover a fair few bits in there within like a short space of time. Hope that's given you a little bit of insight. What I'm going to do, I think we'll throw it over to you guys. If you've got any questions or anything, please do use the text box there, and we'll just maybe give a few minutes for questions. I'll mute myself, and we'll just if you don't have questions, great, but if you do, go for it.
Thank you, Charles. I'm just having a quick read through to see what questions. A lot of people have said how incredibly useful it's been. Andrew Simpson from Cosm Entertainment would like to contact you, Charles. Does anybody else have any more questions they'd like to put in the chat box for Charles, please? Oh, we've got one from Gerdas. What is the best strategy or method to find or get invited to bids? Charles, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, if you're new to bidding, the first thing I'd be doing is looking. I mean, there are various portals out there. Tell you what I'll do. Give me a quick second. We've got some software that we use. It's free to use, and it's a bit more than just it's not just a search engine or search service, if you will. It'll give you a bit of intelligence on your competitors as well, thinking about what I was saying about competitor research and things. This, I'll pop the link in here. I'll put it in twice. If you have a look at that, that will be so the tender pipeline. Register it. It's free to use. That will give you. It should be pick up at least 95% of the bids that are advertised in the public sector. So have a look at that, and as well, it will be giving you sort of intelligence on your competitors, who's winning what. It will also give up some likely re-tender dates. So that'd be worth looking at. I see that other question about standard basic compliance checklists. Some bids that you work on will include a checklist. I've not seen any available anywhere else outside of that. There might be. I suppose. I mean, I will admit, when it comes to bid writing, a lot of it does come to. Some of it does come with experience. Of course, the same as anything. And the checklists. I mean, we've got one that we use, but well, that has been built out of experience, and you can do it off your first bid, thinking, right, what's the word counts, what documents do I need to include? It won't take too long to produce, but let's say standard basic ones, I've not seen any, whether they exist or not. But you need to remember that when you produce one or you find one, you're going to be tweaking it and tailoring it to suit each bid that you're going to be working on anyway. So I see bid support. So for us, it's definitely not a win, no win situation. Like I say, if the pricing's wrong, that's out of our hands. We base it on, it comes down to the amount of work that's involved in the bid. We've worked on bids that have got 2 500-word questions. We've also worked on bids that have got like 60, 70 questions, all of 2,000 words each. So it will really depend on the amount of work. It also depends when we also do bid reviews and also sort of guidance on planning it. Chris, if you want to drop me an email, happy to pick that up with you offline. Examples of standing out. Paul, what do you mean by that?
You just mentioned about, obviously, I was thinking about, competition. Excuse me, I've lost my front tooth, so I'm going to. So I just thought with companies that are on the call, it's a bit like your CV, isn't it? Really, how do companies stand out and grab the attention? Have you got examples of what's good, what has worked, what is don't go there, that's too off the wall?
Well, it's a mix of everything I've been speaking about, really. I mean, there's other things you can do about it, so how you can make the bid look good visually as well. Like I say, use of graphics and text boxes and things like that. But essentially, Stanley, the simplest thing is making it easy to read, Paula. if it's hard to read, you're not going to you're going to stand out for the wrong reasons. We've seen some poorly written bids where it's just long sentences, poor grammar, and things like that. You just not helping. You just got to be doing everything you can do to, like I say, keep the buyer interested and engaged with what you're writing on the bid. So clearly laid out, decent headings, and things like that. Super basic things that can make a difference. Yeah.
Just had Andy ask, can this advice on bid writing apply to Arts Council funding applications?
So, yeah, the majority of what we've ever done as a business is like the sort of commercial bids, if you were in the public sector. In terms of funding, you still, in short, yes, because you still need to convince why they should give you any of the funding. You'll have multiple organisations wanting a slice of that pie, and so again, it's how if you're not writing it in a way that somebody can understand and think, actually, these guys are onto something here, let's award them X thousands of pounds or whatever it is. You haven't done your job. So yeah, in short, a lot of this will be massively useful. And we do get people from third sector and charities attend our bid training courses purely because it's very transferable, but also they find themselves actually, although we are mainly funding, there are some sort of more commercial bids that they are needing to go for. So yeah, it will apply.
That's smashing.